All right, what's going on, guys? We're going to be going over some trade recaps. These trade recaps are going to be on, let me check. The trade recaps are going to be on BA, QQQ, SPY 1 DTE short, QQQ long. Um, I guess we'll also cover the Google loss. So let's go over these ones, and then we'll talk a little bit more about. We'll cover the indice trades in depth, the QQQ long and the SPY short 1 DTE. So let's first off, we'll talk about today's trades. Today is October 11th. So let's go in and let's just talk about this first one. So we bought SPY 1 DTE puts, 433 put at 102 a con. These ran to a high of about 150 as I scaled. Here was the trade. Ran about 50%. So we'll go over this one. Very clean trade, very easy trade. We'll first talk about my plan and what I thought about in the morning. So I had a pre-market analysis somewhere up here. The pre-market analysis was right here. So pre-market plan, watching EMPH, potential SPY, gap trap in play. A lower high from previous day high would make sense for this morning. So let's go over and let's just talk about what I was seeing. First of all, let's go to the daily chart and let's talk a little bit about this gap right here. So this gap was left unfilled, half unfilled, right? So we pushed into this and created a wick, actually came down, created a sell wick, right? So there's a little bit of a bearish bias considering that the call buyers, anybody who's betting on it going up from here, they're going to be trapped within this gap. Um, so that's that. That's what I was first of all seeing. So we'll just make this a very thick line so you know where the gap starts. And then we'll go to the intraday execution and talk a little bit about it. We can get rid of this. Okay, so what I was seeing with this one, guys, was a couple things, but let's just first dive deeper into kind of just the SPY chart. We obviously had this major fair value gap that was forming from yesterday's PM sell-off, which was from here to about here. Extend this over, and there you are, right? So I was expecting some sort of lower high from this high, which is technically the gap trap up here. So this is the high, this is gap unfilled, aka gap trap, right? So call buyers are trapped because they try to front run that gap and that whole entire gap fill, entirety of the gap fill, and then boom, we get this nasty sell off into the PM session from yesterday, and then we kind of just base there, create lower highs and follow suit with structure. We had PPI data this morning. Here was the economic calendar for the day. We had PPI data at 8:30 this morning. So let's go back into the chart. We'll take a look at this and we'll see that we cannot really get a nice strong push over this resistance in pre-market or this pre-market high, right? We kind of swept it based underneath it, right? So that was really feeding my short bias that I had. And keep in mind, guys, this pre-market plan was posted at 9:24 a.m. That's 6 minutes before market open. So I was already having some sort of a short bias, considering that we were getting this push from here down into here, retrace into this 430, 430, and then we got this push from I think this is just 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. And then from there, kind of push higher, but false breakout over pre-market high. That's going to be fuel for a short, meaning, you're trapping buyers above this pre-market high that bought on this wick where price was momentarily just above pre-market high. And ideally what this was doing, guys, was it was just primarily just filling most of this FEG. So take it for from wherever you want it. But this is primarily just filling most of that FEG and testing into the GP probably from yesterday's swing high and swing low, right? So Here's your gap trap. We start to sell off. We start to get underneath this structure from a higher low in pre-market to now a break and base underneath. We sell off. We get below this swing low in pre-market. I don't really care about that. All I'm really looking for, guys, is a retracement back into the range to really be shorting, because this is a technical break of structure with the opening print being here. We get a bearish engulfing that is just slicing right through all of this. Really high volume, keep in mind. Isn't looking very good. And then you get this very diminished spread on low volume. Was a good spot to really be shorting. I just couldn't really pull the trigger. I needed more of a structurally healthy pullback. That's exactly what we get. And what do we really get, guys? We get a push into this unfilled FVG, which pretty much pushes into here. You could take your opening print or your breaker structure retest, which is technically this, which never really got retested on the 5 minute. And then what is the confluence of this as well? So what this is, guys, is this is a GP 618. So that lines up perfectly, the 618 plus the break of structure from over here. So keep in mind, guys, this is all stemming from that thesis of the gap trap, which is trapping call buyers within the gap. And there it is. You get your gravestone doji, increased volume, really dry volume on this 5 minute inside bar. And then you get the expansion off the inside bar, really low volume, high volume kicked in off of this, I believe off of the sell off. Yeah, so it's kind of an increasing volume false breakout, really low volume, small bar at these highs, and then it starts projecting on high volume. You get an attempt of a higher low, and then it just bases there on a 1 minute. Really low volume on the 1 minute right here. Really low volume with sell wicks, sell wicks, sell wicks, sell wicks, and then boom, you start breaking your structure here. This is technically a 1 minute break of structure. And then what do we get? You just get your absolute bloodbath. Tape looked good for the time being. That is simply just it's a very simple trade. It's a very simple pullback. Um, we could go take a look at QQQ in terms of seeing where this was really at. And QQQ was pretty much at a double top, right? Here's your high from the gap, and keep in mind I was shorting SPY because energy was weak, and there's a lot more exposure on the S&P from into energy than there is on the QQQ. QQQ is kind of like tech, primarily tech. It's Nasdaq 100, so it's primarily tech, and it's dependent on tech. Same exact thing, guys. What do we get? We get this higher volume push. That higher volume push is really just going to be pushing into supply from the early morning sell-off. And then from there, what do we have? A gravestone doji, high volume, and then boom, death. And what is this also? A strong seller's ask up here as candle closures and price never really got above this candle close. Kind of wicked up slightly above it. If you really look into this on the 1 minute, you're going to see how this was already getting these distributive looks of inverted hammers on the not inverted hammers, but shooting stars on the one, even though I don't really care about the one. Just a loss of momentum up here, and then the high volume shooting star on the one to top it off at this current high of the trend. And then what do we get? We get a break of structure. What do we get then? Filling probably most of this imbalance downwards. So there's your BOS. Probably going to fill most of this FVG, at least into this spot. Boom, we actually closed beneath that. That's why it's important to wait for your 5 minute candle closures. And then what do we get? We get a low volume retest into that, and then a continuation of a sell-off. And it just follows suit with structure, right? So that's that. If you want to, you could take a look at ES. I look a lot of the times at ES and NQ. This was a nice spot for an FVG entry right here. So technically your FVG is going to probably extend, talking imbalance wise, up into here. This candle low, previous candle low, right? And what exactly is this, guys? This is also a previous buy side. This is also a previous level of liquidity and a sweep. And then what do we get? We get absolute chop off of it, no reclaim of that level, false breakout, and a failure to hold over the levels. What do I expect with this kind of volume pushing back into it, especially with this bar right here, inside bar? I expect a sweep of probably this little high, considering we can't move down, and then a candle closure beneath, and then just a base under this range. Once I go green on my short a little bit, I'm going to go break even stops or set trailing stops with a stop probably above this wick, or if I want to be safer, above this wick. If I feel that there's a push getting into almost stopping me out above this wick high, and that's where my stop is, I'll simply just bump it up to this wick. The risk tolerance in terms of a 1 DTE there, just it's not a lot in terms of the reward that I could really be receiving. And guys, what I was really just targeting was, first of all, just this level right here at first. Like, my RR was probably going to be looking something like this. Stop up here. I'm pretty sure my entry was like down here. Or wait, no, here. So target probably down here. Entry around here. We'll just say like in the midst of this. Stop is up here. So you're looking at almost a 3-to-1 RR, and that wasn't my full target. My full target was probably FVG fill down here. Right, so at least a discount. So discount would be probably something that looks like this. So yeah, my target was a little bit below discount. Discount would technically be right like here. So that's a 3-to-1 RR. Not totally horrible. Could be a little bit better, but for the time being, keep in mind, guys, we have CPI tomorrow, and I took this trade today, so definitely not a horrible RR in terms of like what my daily bias was, things like that. So next trade, what was my next trade? Next trade was looking something like this. Here was my next trade. So there was the first one we were talking about, 50% return, SPY 1DT puts, beautiful. We can also talk a little bit about tech confluence because sometimes I like that. Apple wasn't necessarily looking so good in terms of where I was shorting this at. This was a Gravestone Doji at 11 a.m. This is also a clock change, so clock change reversal, it brings in a lot of volatility, things like that. Apple, what I was noticing on Apple was primarily just filling most of this FVG, bar by bar FVG 5 minute up into here. So that makes total sense in terms of like the stronger tech leader for the day was really topping out, showing distributive looks with higher volume stop coming in off of this FEG fill with multiple wick rejections, and it kind of kept me in the trade and kept my emotions pretty nice, pretty clean. Um, Microsoft, what was Microsoft doing? Microsoft was kind of like pushing back into some sort of like supply zone that we had from the AM session. It was kind of like a false breakout over a daily trend line. And when we really drag this over, what is this? Okay, that's nothing. This is new highs. This is fresh new highs on Microsoft. But Microsoft hasn't really been a strong name, so it wasn't something that was really catching my eye, you know? And then obviously the oil sector was really getting beat down at the moment. This looked like a fresh pullback for the oil sector, and it looked like we were going to get continuation off of this continuation favoring bar. This pretty much was just a lower high and a high volume shooting star. So that's pretty clutch as to why that was pretty clutch as to why that was there in the time for the time being. So let's go back. So let's now go into the QQQ trade. QQQ, it was very clean thesis. Here was my QQQ thesis. So I said I'm currently long. This is whenever I was long zeros like an idiot, and I don't really condone just buying zeros. Um, Risk tolerance wise, I think a 1DT is a much safer trade and a much more manageable trade in terms of emotion and obviously P&L. This was at 1:50 p.m. I'm currently long. So what do we have? We had high impact news, which was minutes of Fed September's FOMC meeting. Um, so that's FOMC minutes. It's not the legitimate FOMC, but it's high impact news, right? So I was looking at a couple things. So I figured NQ and Apple was in an absolute illiquid environment. Look at this. There's no liquidity behind this. There's no interaction of buyers and sellers here. It's a barcode. It's choppy. It's shitty, right? So first of all, what am I looking at for buyers to really be stepping in? I'm looking at obviously below discount. Um, so fib from low to high. I'm looking at below this, obviously, for buyers to really start stepping in, filling most of this 15-minute FVG from the morning session that was left unfilled, which is pretty much filled, right? So there's your 15-minute FVG, bar by bar FVG. As you can see, we had a beautiful base on it. When you have a beautiful base on the golden pocket, keep in mind, low to high Fibonacci, as well as the FVG, it's usually a pretty good sign that we're probably going to see continuation, or at least a push higher into the FOMC minutes. Keep in mind, guys, FOMC minutes was at 2. 2, yeah. So 2 is 14 on military time. Here is 14. I was figured that in terms of just simply sweeping a level of liquidity, like we're going to with this amount of base and chop, I don't think price can really just gravitate downwards, meaning from here down, from here like tiny little retest and fall. I don't think that that's the case. I think what has to happen is we need to get a push up above these highs or any sort of buy side liquidity and then kind of sweep that high in terms of where news wants to take us, and then like something like this, like something that looks like that, right? And that's not really what we got, right? We kind of got like it would look something like this, like a sweep of these highs, a sweep of this high, and we didn't really get that. We got the continuation, which I'm happy for. But my overall thesis for if we wanted to see continuation to the downside, we would have had to sweep a high regardless, considering the base in tech, considering the illiquid environment in the Nasdaq, things like that, right? So we'll go back over here. What do we notice about each? What do we notice about the structure of the Nasdaq? We notice that the lower lows are getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and that's really a loss of momentum. I saw a lot of asks starting to get less and less aggressive as we push further down and into the FOMC minutes. And as you can see, I mean, every single lower low that we made, 6 cent lower low in an hour and 25 minutes. That's basically bears getting extremely tired through an hour and a half a time frame, and 6 cents covered a price action in that long. That's garbage. 38 cents in 40 minutes, garbage. Um, 1 cent in 30 minutes, trash. 26 cents in 1 hour, trash. 29 cents in 25 minutes, trash. T-rash. T-fucking rash. So guess what? We're going to need to sweep buy side, which would probably be intraday wise. Internal liquidity would be sitting probably something around this 369.55. It was 434 on 434 something on SPY, 434.30. And what else do we also notice? Let's go over here. Let's go to my account. How do I get to my account? Here we are. Um, Here's my thesis. No range expansion on app. If there is a bottom, it will be here. ES FEG fill plus GP, hourly tweezer potential, which would result in a BOS above 434.30. I'm not going to buy the trigger and front run or I'm not going to pull the trigger and front run this, guys. 434.30 is the BOS. It's the valid BOS in which we'd probably see upside post FOMC minutes or pre FOMC minutes. I'm sorry, before FOMC minutes meeting came out or whatever it is, the little fucking document that comes out. I don't really give a fuck what it is, but it's high impact news. But guess what? Liquidity gets dried up, it gets soaked, it gets really dry pre-news, pre-high impact news. So I figured there's not going to be enough liquidity to really reverse this thing before pre-FOMC. But we're going to need to sweep something higher if we want to see lower based off the high impact news. That was kind of where my thesis was stemming from. NQ never swept anything, so Apple would need some expansion. We really never got that expansion. So what did I have to wait for? I had to wait for tech to sweep. So let's go over my ES thesis. We'll go into the Discord. We'll talk a little bit about this. Where is my thesis? Okay, here's my thesis. So 4381 is kind of what I was looking at in terms of where we were going to move in 430. Okay, so what I was ideally watching, guys, was it doesn't have to be perfect. My original spot was like up here, and it kind of pushed a little bit beneath that, which is fine. But what I was really watching was these FVGs to get filled, which technically ends down here. If you want to take it bar by bar on a 5 minute time frame, that's kind of where it ends. And if you kind of come over here and look, it's the full FVG fill on on ES, which is the S&P. Uh, I don't, and then what NQ was, is I said NQ wasn't really sweeping anything. I previously talked about how that could be a bottom over over here, but I really came into conclusion that ES didn't really sweep much of anything. I think it might have been over here. I can't remember, over here, something like that. Um, but then we no range expansion on Apple tech names. So what I was really watching was I was watching this line right here, which is basically the 618 on NQ. What that line was previous buy side, which is our most recent lowest low of an established range. So what it was, guys, was it was something that looks like this. So you got uptrend, uptrend, and then you start making these lows, but then we were kind of just chopping, and then like we moved a little bit higher, came back down. Right now we're trending down. We're trying to push, and then that's our lowest low right there. So we never really swept something that looks like that, and that was kind of in alignment with the ES FVG fill. So I saw the confluence between the indices and I saw the confluence between NQ and ES or tech. I never really saw that range expansion that I wanted to see. Um, so let's just go over this real quick. I was looking at this on like a 15. Here's the low that I was watching. As you can see, that low is marked out on my chart. Where's the low on my chart? It's on my Twitter. Never mind. Low right here. Yeah, so that wick low, equilibrium was slightly above that, so I figured that'd be around the 618 as well. Um, I was just taking a GAN backs, and I was finding out where equilibrium was from this move higher, which was our current swing high. It was actually a small swept swing high, so if you want to, you could technically go here, but I'm just here, get it out the way. Here's kind of like your 618. I kind of back tested it with a Fibonacci tool, low to high 618. There's your 618. It actually bottom ticked off the 618. So I figured, if SPY can't do it, ES can't do it, NQ or QQQ is going to have to sweep something And in terms of QQQ, guys, what that was that was a range, just a test of support from the PM session of yesterday, right? So whenever we dive deeper into the intraday analysis, what I saw mass amounts of buying volume hitting the tape down here, buyers loading, things like that. I saw attempts of pushing this further down, and then I started just seeing these higher volume hammers. Once I saw the effort really pull on this, I saw asks pull and the volume get really low on an attempt to shove this down. I started taking entries based off of this. And if you go over to the Discord, that is in perfect alignment with this. I'm currently long, 1:50 p.m. We go over to 1:50 p.m. That is the candle open um, on Qs. That is the candle open right here, 1350. So, or I'm sorry, yeah, that's what that is. Or the candle closure I meant, because this is a 1 minute. It's the candle open of this. Not necessarily candle open, but somewhere in the bottom range, because the 1 minute was, here's 350 right here. So once I saw this start pushing up higher volume, really small attempt of a sell-off, really small volume attempt, I just figured, with NQ sweeping and sucking back above these highs, um, ES filling its FVG, and then obviously high impact news coming in about 10 minutes, I figured we would have to sweep some sort of previous untested high, something like this, maybe something all the way up here. But my price target was initially this with heavier size. And then as I saw the base and higher lows hold and the break of structure hold from like over here, I figured this is really going to squeeze through, see continuation, probably fill a lot of this FVG, or at least retrace into the GP, which is the golden pocket. And that was kind of what we did. We filled this FVG very cleanly. And I figured, guys, with price delivery like with it delivering up into these untested highs and it's sweeping them on higher volume, but then a base on a valid break of structure from over here. I figured with with a higher low and then a melt through this flat top resistance, we're going to fill this FVG, probably test into the supply. And that's exactly what we did. We showed a little bit of a sign of rejection and then just a complete melt right through that. Probably because shorts were underwater and they figured they probably couldn't stop it off of these highs, which was already tested 3 times. So the supply is obviously going to be a slightly weaker. So yeah, that's the trade recap for the long trade today. We could go over PLTR a little bit. PLTR was simply just a strong trade. What I saw was a higher volume base down here with an increasing tighter spread, smaller candle, but increasing volume, looking like a hammer candle off the $17 level. Obviously, you could see I was a very relatively strong name for the day. There was really no amounts of volume on this sell-off, and really what this was just doing was it was really just retracing into equilibrium for a move higher. Here's your equilibrium right here, kind of basing on that. I took it with a tight risk from here, risking this low. So the RR was very clean, and then I took it for about 25% up here for the base hit. My runners, I saw a lower high or a higher low coming in from these lows, and it ended up running like 60, 70%, something like that, maybe 80%. And then the BA trade was very clean. Defenses have been seeing obviously very strong looks with this being super beaten down. I mean, guys, this is beaten down literally within the past 36 days, about 20%. And for a very uh, I'm not going to say good company, but for a company that people buy and people are over a lot, and for a company that is in a sector that really has, for a company that's in a sector that really has a lot of defensive names in it, this one might be catching a couple bids. If you go over to the sector's watch list, what this is is this is, if I pull this over, this sector is, I want to say, industrials. So yeah, you have your defense, you have some defensives in here. LMT went absolutely unreal. This is because of the war, guys. We've been in the war. This is a war theme with like Israel versus Palestinians. Huge gap up, 8.9% Green Day. Um, we also had another one, RTX. I think they would create like bombs or like military shit. They were up 4.6%. That's big moves for stocks in this sector. So back over to BA. What this was I took this trade yesterday, and yeah, yesterday was absolutely the perfect spot to really be taking it. We saw a nice hammer candle and we saw a tight diminishing spread on the daily chart. And if you go to the weekly and zoom out, what else? Um, okay, there was nothing in terms of the weekly, but very beaten down name, hot sector, things like that. A nice little gap up on it. And then where did I take this? Took it on the retest and hold in the wick off of pre-market high. And there was also delivery numbers expected to be released or something like that. So I figured, with BA being this beat down, these delivery numbers and things like that should probably send this up. It was a lotto. Sorry, it's hard for me to really remember. Here was the BA trade. 100 BA. Um, yeah, lottery tickets for delivery numbers, 197 call, 64. So I picked two strikes. It's at 10:59, so this was also at the clock change. 11 o'clock, yeah, clock change, boom, ton of volume, breakthrough this high, and overall just a really really nice trade. We'll go over Coinbase too. So the ARKK ETF was really hot. What ARKK is it includes a lot of growth like Coinbase, things like that, a lot of crypto, and it was a really hot ETF for the day. So Coinbase trade was up here, coin half size yesterday at 10:19 a.m. 82 call at 124. So I was instantly up 10%. It gave me some nice leeway while I was in the AMC 10 and a halves. Those are in the money by the way today. Where is this? Am I retarded? Okay, it's right here. So I took this at 10:19. We go over to 10:19. Here's 10:15. Is this it? Okay, so it was simply a retest of this level and a hold of it. Okay, it was a retest of previous high day. The ARKK was really hot, but I noticed going to go break even stop considering ARKK is at the 200 SMA. I'll stop and catch a retest if I can. That was at 1021. 1021 was all the way up here. So 1021 was up here. We got in down here. It was instantly up like 10, 12, 13%. We never stopped out break even. It continued higher. It was a shaky trade, but it held higher lows, things like that. And ARKK was getting close to that 200 SMA. So I simply just, was taking trims and I was setting stops so I didn't lose on the trade. And yeah, I mean, it was just it was a clean trade, and I was also in AMC at the time. That was about 10. 1020. We go over to take a look at AMC. It was over here. Yeah, so I was in AMC down here. That also exploded, which sent the cons up decently well. And unfortunately, those came back down to break even. And then, yeah, of course, she had to rip off of that same level today, $10 level. But yeah, those are the trade recaps, boys. Yeah,